Hi folks, and welcome back to the Stormins Cellar for your military update. A U.S. Navy Chief Petty Officer, Pedicini, stationed in Japan, was charged with espionage and sharing classified documents with a foreign national after secretly smuggling files from secure locations by various means. Pedicini apparently was under investigation from 2022 to 2023 while stationed in Hampton Roads, Virginia. While in Yokosuka, Japan, he was charged with attempting to transmit national security documents to a foreign source. Remember, folks, the Soviet Cold War may be over, but foreign agents are still anxious to get their hands on classified material from U.S. service personnel, especially those who are vulnerable. As you may know, the Pentagon has had a very difficult time accounting for the billions of dollars that's been appropriated to them by Congress. However, you'll be happy to know that the U.S. Marine Corps is the first military branch ever to pass a complete financial audit which accounted for $46.3 billion and took over 2 years to conduct. Semper Fi to the Corps, and thanks from the taxpayers. Now for some not-so-good news with the U.S. Army. According to writer Owen West of The Hill, the Pentagon's new recruitment policy is a disaster. According to him, more than 50% of adults under 30 years old have negative views of the military. White liberals don't really want to have anything to do with serving in the military, and unfortunately, white alpha males are turning their backs on the woke Army as well. The Pentagon has done everything it can to undercut non-commissioned officers, recruiters, and doctors to cull out the dead weight by encouraging substandard and sometimes dregs of society to join. DoD has instituted the electronic screening health system, which does away with red flags. Seems counterproductive to me. In addition, to avoid body shaming, the DoD banned group physicals, so instead of dozens of physicals in 15 minutes, doctors now have to take up to 90 minutes over each potential recruit. In other Army personnel news, the Army plans to drastically cut approximately 24,000 soldiers out of the ranks in a major force reduction and restructuring plan. About 3,000 cuts are going to come from the Army Special Forces with a shift away from counterinsurgency. The idea is to focus on great power competition such as China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Is it just me, or if the U.S. has to go to war with one or all of these countries, won't they need every man, woman, and K-9 they can get their hands on? Essentially, the Army realizes they screwed the pooch on recruiting and have dug themselves into a deep hole. Therefore, this restructuring plan is just a smoke and mirrors to wipe the slate clean of an already deficient recruiting and retention number in their force. Of course, recruiting isn't the Army's only problem. The Army spent $2 billion and requested another $5 billion to build the Army's newest armed scout helicopter. Hoping to be the new model for Army acquisition, the Army not only canceled this program, but many others, including the upgrades to the Army's UH-60 Black Hawk and AH-60 Apache helicopters. Now, I'm all for cutting money where you don't need it, but modernization is also critical to compete with those great powers if and when the U.S. has to. Now here's something that's becoming quite commonplace. Another Chinese balloon transited into the U.S. last Friday where it was detected by NORAD and intercepted by F-22 fighters over Utah. Although U.S. fighter pilots said it wasn't a hazard to safety of flight, U.S. intelligence reported that they believe the balloon is part of an extensive Chinese military-run surveillance program involving a fleet of balloons that has conducted surveillance. This also includes the one last year that floated over the entire U.S. and over numerous vulnerable military installations before finally being shot down over the Atlantic. Call me crazy, but I'm guessing the U.S.'s enemies would not hesitate to shoot down any balloon or aircraft over their territory. Now, let it never be said that the long arm of Putin was not alive and well. A 28-year-old Russian pilot, Captain Maxim Kuzmanov, who defected to Ukraine last year in his Mi-8 helicopter, was shot to death with 5 bullet wounds while living in Spain. It's reported he was paid well by the Ukrainian government and that he encouraged other pilots to do the same. Perhaps the other pilots might not take the same risks as this young captain. And finally, French President Emmanuel Macron must have gotten the memo from the U.S. Congress. He now realizes the U.S. is no longer an automatic free flow of money to Ukraine. Macron not only is encouraging other EU countries to belly up more money to Ukraine, but said sending Western troops to Ukraine could not be ruled out, and that Paris would drop its long-standing opposition to purchasing emergency artillery supplies for Ukraine from outside the EU. As I've said in other videos, Europe, who has been reluctant in spending money on their own defense and, in fact, delinquent in their fair share to NATO for some time, is now starting to feel the heat from Russia. Macron is now stating that Russia's defeat is necessary to ensure Europe's collective security and said, "We will do everything needed so Russia cannot win the war." The EU is shaking in their boots, folks. Let me say once again, this is too much too late and will only escalate war with Russia by Western European countries, which will ultimately draw U.S. forces into supporting NATO. Okay, this wraps up your military update. Let me know what you think by leaving your comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. So until next time, make sure all your takeoff and landings equal.